intuition? Okay, I see a few skeptical folks in here. Skeptical or those who've been around and perhaps made mistakes before. I see you, you're my people. Now, I asked 120 of my friends in my Facebook group, do you trust your intuition? 87% said yes, they trust it. 1% said no. 1% said they used to, but no longer do. I know, it's funny. And then 2 people say sometimes, but they prefer to rely on data. Now, there's a lot of data. There's so much research out there on the topic of intuition. Women versus men, pattern recognitions, interviews of CEOs who made decisions based on their intuition only and were very successful. The founder of Sphinx, by the way, invented that product based on intuition. I read that in the Wild magazine last night. I thought that's like the only piece of research that I'll share with you, because when I was looking at all these articles and all this research, my intuition kicked in and said, please don't bore people. Who wants to hear that? That's too boring. So I decided to explore and share with you the power of 3 L's. Listen, lean on, and leverage. For us to listen to our intuition, we have to create space for it so it can be heard. We need to lean on intuition because often we don't have enough data, we have too much data, still can't make a decision, or there's no time to gather data. Makes a lot of sense? Yeah? All right. I have a couple of people that are like, woo! Go Luba. Yes. All right. So the power of 3 L's: listen, lean on, and leverage. Now, I used to trust my intuition fully. About 10 years ago, I was asked to build a team. I had absolutely no experience hiring people and even less managing them. The first 2 people that I hired after a 30-minute conversation, one of them not even face-to-face. My intuition was so strong. I didn't know anyone who knew them. We had no common connections on LinkedIn. And what's crazy, I didn't even check references. Bizarre. But they turned out to be the most incredible humans, incredible employees. And I rehired one of them twice more. This is how my leadership career started. And as my teenagers put it after I shared this keynote, and I said, listen, like I hired so many more incredible people after that, it's crazy. And they said, Mom, you slayed really hard. Yeah, I did. And I did. But my ego got the best of me, perhaps, because I stopped trusting my intuition until I made a really bad hiring decision. And we're talking about it being so bad that even now, years later, I think of it as the worst 6 months of my career. And not because I was miserable and all the sleepless nights, but because I felt like I let down my whole team and many people in the organization. And I thought, where was my intuition? Were there no red flags? How is it that it didn't protect me from that hiring mistake? For years, I blamed my intuition. I know blaming is not a good thing, but I did. Like, how could you not protect me from that horrible hiring mistake? Until I realized that I didn't let my intuition have a voice. For us to lean on our intuition, we have to see it as a friend. I asked my 17-year-old daughter, do you trust your intuition? Absolutely 100%. My daughter proceeded with so many examples of why this strong trust, and then she stopped and said with full confidence, well, you know, Mom, now I quote this, you gotta love this kid. You know, Mom, women have a very strong intuition. Men, on the other hand, they wouldn't listen to the intuition if it showed up naked dancing on the table. It's the exact quote. Now, I don't know where the bitterness towards men come from at such a young age, but at that moment, I knew why I made that hiring mistake. My daughter mentioning men not listening, to their intuition if it showed up naked, made me realize that I didn't let my intuition have a voice. I was under so much stress to hire someone, so much pressure, and just a very challenging time in my life in general. I wasn't listening. In fact, I wasn't even listening to my coworkers. One of the HR representatives and one of the executives, they tried to push back on that hiring approval. But the decision was mine, and even though they did see red flags and they tried to warn me, I wasn't listening. So if I was in the state of mind where I didn't listen to my coworkers who I respected and trusted, my intuition didn't have a chance. For us to lean on our intuition and listen to it, we have to see it as our friend. Now, how do we listen to our friends and our coworkers? When I need feedback or advice or help with making a decision, my first go-to person is my sister. I see my sister as my friend, she has my back, I trust her. And we have this agreement. I ask my sister for honest feedback and opinion, and then I don't cry if I don't hear what I want to hear. So I proactively create space for that feedback to be heard. So how can we create space for our intuition to have voice? Self-awareness is key. We have to be self-aware. We have to self-reflect and see, are we under a lot of stress? Is there fear? What is happening with us? It is so important to be self-aware. I go for walks, I go for hikes, I go downhill skiing by myself. That is my form of meditation. And you just have to experiment. You have to experiment and see what works for you. Now, why do we need to lean on our intuition? Now imagine you see your intuition as a friend. Beautiful, beautiful friendship. You trust your intuition. You listen to your intuition. Perhaps you leaned on it. Okay, great, but maybe you still made a mistake. So how can intuition be a friend if it's not always reliable? If the intuition is not reliable, why not just rely on data? In 1929, Einstein was asked, what is the source of his genius? He had no doubts. He replied, I sometimes feel that I'm right. I don't know that I am. And he chose to experiment rather than to dismiss. So we need to lean on our intuition because often there is no data. And sometimes we have no time to gather data. Now imagine a fire captain running into the burning building, assessing the situation and screaming, clear the floor, 2 minutes before it collapses. There's no time to collect data. It is based on experience. Perhaps that captain recognized certain patterns. It's that gut feeling, it's the intuition. So sometimes it's a matter of life and death, and you have to listen. You have to use your intuition as your best friend, the one you have to lean on, you have to leverage, you have to listen to. Now, regardless of circumstances, why do some people trust the intuition and some prefer to rely on data? They're all different people. Some of us are more trusting than others in general. Some of us are more analytical than others in general. Some of us do not take risks. Some of us do not make decisions until we know for sure we're not going to make a mistake. So trusting your intuition enough to listen to it, lean on it, and leverage depends on you. How trusting are you in general? How do you make decisions in general? And how badly have you been burned before? Intuition is not your friend if you don't let it be. Intuition could be your best friend if you let it. The only thing better than having a best friend that you can trust is having a circle of friends that you can rely on. The facts and the research and the data and the metrics, they could also be your friends. Your human friends could be your friends. Leverage them all. Leverage all that you got. And if you leverage yourself with friends and still make a mistake? That's okay too. Remember, fail stands for facing another important lesson. Embracing the 3 L's, listening, leaning on, and leveraging, and taking action, regardless of the outcomes, could lead you to a very powerful learning opportunity. Be unstoppable. Good luck, and thank you.